Okay, so I need everybody to go look into that folder that they just downloaded that's got all of your assignments in here. I want to go over what's in the first one just to give you some idea to have it match up with what's going on in terms of the assignments. So if you take a look at our Canvas site, you can see that yeah, install software found in the retouching assignment folder. I want to look at that for just 1 second. Oh, and this is what we were also talking about. So we'll just go through the assignments really quickly. I typically do not do this except for the first class. I do not expect, you guys are more than adult enough, and so I know that you know that there's going to be assignments. Just go look for them. They're all going to be on the Canvas site, whatever. I don't take a ton of time out to go over them and all that kind of stuff. We don't have that time. So at any rate, introduce yourself. It's just a discussion board. Attach a picture and reply to a couple other people. That's fine. Set up your system. Largely, we're going to be doing that in class today, so it'll already be done. However, if you've got another computer at home, or you've got a desktop computer at home, or something else like that, you may want to also set that up as well. So depends on just your working situation. Again, these are non-graded assignment. The first one's graded, but a lot of this is not graded. I have no idea if you're going to go in and actually do those readings. I will never know that. So, but there's things that I'm hoping that you will do. At any rate, check out a Wacom tablet for the entire semester. So if you've dealt with the Media Center at all, they are now asking everybody, if you want to pick up gear from the Media Center, to actually email them first about it. So you would be emailing maybe you. This is her email address right here. This is where the Media Center actually is. When you shoot her an email, just say that you want to check out a Wacom tablet for the retouching class. They're specifically set aside for this class, so they'll know what you're talking about. And then just say what day and time you want to actually go get this. So go get it. So anyway, I'm hoping that you'll have it by next week because we need it to actually set it up. So anyway, that's what this whole thing is about. So if we go back to our assignments for this first semester, you'll see that there's an install software found in the retouching assignment folder. If you go to your session 1, so in your assignment folder, I'll do it with you right here. So in the retouching assignments folder, go to the student files week 01. Inside of here, you'll see that there's also a PDF that's got your assignments. It's the exact same assignments. There are no working files that you're actually doing on this. You'll see when we get into like week 2 and 3 and 4, whatever, there'll be an actual folder that has the working files as well as a PDF that lists the assignment about what I'm going to ask you to do. This connect to class projects via Macintosh and via Windows. This is exactly what we did at the very beginning of the class. So if for some reason your connection breaks or it doesn't work or whatever, you can actually just go through the steps here again. Again, this is exactly what we just did for the Mac people and then for the Windows. And so that exists there. There's a couple of random set of PDFs in here. Again, there's things like, the attendance policy, the color primer, all of that kind of stuff. A lot of it you'll see is also on our website itself. So this is just kind of a repository for some of this stuff. And then there's software installers. If you click on the software installers, you will see that there is a group for the Macintosh and then there's a group for Windows. So if we click on the Macintosh one and you want to take a look at it, what these are is these are softwares. The first one, this Calibrate Profiler, is what you're going to use to profile the monitor of your laptop. Again, there's obviously for Windows, it's different software, but nonetheless, so it's respective. This color checker camera calibration is how we're going to make sensor profiles. And then this Wacom tablet, you're going to need to have this installed to actually have your Wacom tablet function. So I've got a question. Does anybody in this room who is on Macintosh have anything that's older than 4 years? Okay. We may, depending on again, when we get next week, one of the assignments is going to be to calibrate your monitor. But there's a 3-week window to actually do that. If there's some Macs that are old enough now that require a different calibrator and a different software than what is currently being used by everybody, by the whole rest of the world. So if that's the case, we will find out. And so I was just going to try to get ahead of it. Eli.
If we still have those from the advanced or the...
If you've already done this, then you've already done this and you have nothing to worry about. Yeah, I do this in every one of my classes. So
it is the same software
it's exactly the same process. So again, yeah, so you're not going to, if you've got it done, you're not going to have to do it again. So at any rate, that's what this is all about though. But the color checker calibration stuff, you do need to actually do that because that's going to be more sensor profile stuff. Then there's also 2 other things that are over here. This Pix Imperfect Player. This is a plugin that will go into Photoshop. You basically don't double click this now. I need to make sure that we've got something set up in your preferences correct. But this is what it actually does. So I'm going to show you this really quickly. This is a great little feature. This is actually written by, there's only 3 people on YouTube that when it comes to retouching that I actually have a real respect for. And this guy's one of them. But at any rate, let me just show you what it is. So if we take a look at the plugin itself, again, don't run this yet. But you can see right here, this allows you to actually, it gives you a screen inside of Photoshop that you can use to, so all the videos that I record here, you can actually play the video while you're doing the work. Also, you're not having to leave Photoshop and go back into a browser and then come back, whatever. Yeah, it's and it's resizable, so you can move it around and get it a little bit bigger and do those sorts of things anyway. But I just figure it was just such a brilliant thing to have handy for you guys to be able to watch a video and actually be working on it all at the same time. And this isn't true just of my videos. This would be true of, this is anything. So back here, and then this last thing right here, this Pantone color books. I don't want you to, we're going to install this together, but again, we need to get your Photoshop set up first before we put this in. So Pantone used to be a part of Photoshop. It's been a part of Photoshop from its very beginning. But 3 or 4 years ago, 2022, Adobe discontinued support for it because they it was costing them too much money. So it's not like Adobe hasn't gotten enough of our money already. But they're doing this with a lot of things. I don't know if are any of you guys doing any AI in Photoshop right now yet? We get to it in a pretty big way in this class. This will be we got it a little bit last semester, but I'm going pretty full blown this semester. Yeah.
Did they let us have more tokens?
I'm sorry, what?
Did they give us more tokens?
No, so this is where I was going with all of this. So they've introduced a lot of third-party support now in a lot of the Photoshop tools. AI is one of the biggest ones. So they've rolled, most of you would know it by Nana Banana, they've rolled Google's Gemini AI technology into the generative taskbar, the generative fill taskbar. But there's no support for it if you're on an educational account, which we are. So I ended up writing a plugin that circumvents all of that. So you're going to get it. However, it's like everything. The reason that they don't have support in an educational environment is that you have to pay for it. But typical of Adobe, they charge you more than Google does to use their technology directly in Google, right? Which is, anyway, it is what it is. But anyway, so there's solutions to all of this, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So, but at any rate, the Pantone color books, it's Pantone. Anybody in this room know Pantone, what Pantone is? Anybody not? So Pantone, they're like the color authority of the world. So Pantone is the company that actually will say what the color of the year is, which ironically this year is white. But at any rate,
is it pure white or just
no,
white?
it's a very subtle offshade of some kind of white. I forget what it's called. It's
Walker?
something like that. Yeah, I don't know, some weird. But at any rate, Pantone is so in the printing industry, you can, most of you guys know, you're familiar with working, CMYK print, CMYK inks, right? So cyan, magenta, yellow, and then black inks. That's typically, but you can do, especially there are presses that will do more than just 4 inks. But there's also, even in the 4 ink presses, you can pull those cyan and the CMYK inks out, and you can replace them with what they call process colors. And they're all defined by Pantone. So, and usually for me, whenever I would have an art director would give us a direction for the color they wanted to set, they would give it to us as a Pantone color. So if you work in the Pantone system, you get these books that have, they'll like have sheets of color in it that, it's like a sheet of stamps. And they're all perforated, and you can tear one off and it's the same color. And so I could give you this Pantone C248 blue, and you would have it, and then you could actually take it to a paint store and have it matched, or you could have it with you when you were styling and you were looking for, I need to find a vase that's got this exact color, or I need to find flowers that have this. It's the way people talk about color. Anyway, they remove support for it, but there's enterprising people like me who lie and steal. And so I actually have old versions of Photoshop that have the entire set of Pantone books in them. So I just pulled them out of one of my old versions of Photoshop, and I'm giving them to you to stick right back in where they belong so that you will have Pantone color support in Photoshop. And you will be able to do that forevermore. I know, you're just raising your hand to thank me, right?
Yes. Are we only printing the final for this class?
Yes.
Okay.
Everything else is electronic. Oh, and on that point, this is a great point. Everything is electronic. It's all either Photoshop or TIFF and not flattened. I need to see layers. I need to see exactly what's going on. So everything that you turn in, image-wise, will be that way.
Do you grade on organization?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't. I don't grade on organization. I will never test you, again, I will never test you on keyboard shortcuts. I will never test you on any of that kind of stuff. It's really about, and the thing is, and I think you guys already know this about Photoshop, is there is 1,000 ways to do the same thing in Photoshop. I just try to get the ones that are the cleanest and the fastest. And so anyway, that's so for homework, I do want you to install this respective software so that when you come in next week, we do not have to take the time out to actually do the install and do the troubleshooting and do all of that. So please go ahead and do that. Don't worry about, and you can go ahead, again, once we get through today, you can go ahead and launch this Piximperfect player. It'll load automatic. You don't have to do anything in Photoshop. And then once you get there, there's this plug-in part right here that you will get to, and it will load this for you, and you can actually use it. So anyway, that's what that's all about. Alrighty. Back to our Canvas site really quick. If you take a look in our resources for session 1, there's this file naming convention right here. If you open this up, this is the file naming convention that I use for my work. And again, if you've been in any of my classes before, you know how I feel about this and how strongly I feel about this. And I'm going to preach this till the day that I die. You need a naming convention that works for you. And you need to, no matter what you have used up until now, it doesn't matter. I have seen people, oh my God, I have a naming convention. What do you name your files? Oh, well, there were flowers, so I call it flowers. And they have flowers 1 through 100,000 flowers, right? And it's just like, how do you find anything? Oh, well, I just looked through it all again, and it's just no way to ever, or anyway. So this is the naming convention that I use. This is a consequence of working in a professional world, professional studios, all that kind of stuff, whatever. This comes out of that discipline. If you look at best practices that are done by pretty much any group that's dealing with photography, so photojournalists, any of that kind of stuff, whatever, they'll support something that's incredibly close, if not exactly this. So I want to go through this really quickly because I want you guys to start using. This is not the naming convention that you will use for the assignments that you turn into me. This is the naming convention I'm suggesting that you adopt for the rest of the work in your life. This will give it structure, makes finding shit really easy. So that's why I'm throwing this out here to you right now. So at any rate, it starts off at the very top. This is what the whole thing looks like right here. This is the definition of what each one is. So the first you can see it's Y, 4 Ys, whatever. It's the year. The whole rest of the world does their dating starting with year and then month and then day, except for the United States. We start with day, then month, then year. And the problem is that if you name your files that way, you don't get them in chronological order because you will get all of the days will be first. Or some people will actually do month first and then day and then year. So then you get all of your Septembers are together and all your Januaries are together. That's not chronological order. So if you start with your year and then your month and then your day, everything that you do will be in chronological order, and the stuff that you are working on will always be the last folder. The very bottom folder is always the current one that you're working in. I have terabytes of sessions that I've done in Capture One that are all in perfect chronological order. And there's enough inside every one of those naming conventions to get me really close to being able to find anything that I need pretty fast. I have to hunt around a little bit, but not a whole heck of a lot. And again, I have thousands of them. So it starts with day, year, month, day. There's an underscore. CCC stands for me. That's a client code. If you actually read what it's talking about right here. So when I'm shooting for Neiman Marcus, it's NEI. When I'm shooting for Saks, it's SAK. When I'm shooting for myself, it's VER. It's just a quick 3 letters that tells you who you were doing this for. So it's great for me because, anyway, so it gives me information that otherwise I wouldn't have. So anyway, that part's important. Underscore, and then keywords, and you'll see keywords is actually 8 letters long. Your keywording is just something that you can give about what the pictures were about. It can't be, your keyword cannot be longer than 8 letters. That's why it's plural up here, because the length of this entire thing is set. It's a finite length. You can't go longer than this. The naming cannot be 1 letter character longer than this is. So that's why. Your keyword can be shorter, but it can't be longer. So for instance, when I'm doing for Neiman Marcus and I'm shooting beauty, I know the date that I shot it, I know it was for Neiman Marcus, and I know it was beauty. Now, I do a lot for a lot of clients, so maybe it's, and I'm looking for something that's 5 years old. Maybe it was 5 years old, maybe it was 6 years old. So, but again, having that information in my naming format, I don't have to look at that many folders. I'm not opening up every folder that I shot in 2022. Are you kidding me? So at any rate, there's another underscore, and then there's a 2-digit number. That for me, so again, I'm a fashion shooter. So typical fashion day for me is 15 to 20 outfits. That's what I'll be shooting. So that 2-digit number is the outfit number that I'm shooting. So if I'm shooting the first outfit, it's 01. Second outfit's 02. Third outfit's 03. You always want to use 2 digits because if you use, let's say your first one, you only use the number 1. What ends up happening is that when that gets sorted, you go from number 1 to number 11 and then to number 2. That's why you always want double, so that if you put in 01, it will be, the next one will be 02, the next one will be 03. It'll be structured in order. So anyway, there's very little wiggle room in this. The last 3 numbers in there are the frame number, and that's usually supplied by your software. And then the extension that's on the end. And the thing that's the beauty about this is that, so now when I have my raw file, that extension is CR2. When I make a Photoshop file out of that, the only thing that changes is the .psd. The name is exactly the same. I make a JPEG of it. It's then that name with a JPEG. I make a a liquify mask that I save. It's got that same name with that extension on that. I do a history log. It's got that same name so that everything that relates to that one raw file is all connected and it's all together. And I am not looking for shit like, oh, no, I made a JPEG of that, but I don't know where it is. And I sure don't know what I named it. That all goes away. This is 32 characters long. It's no longer than that. There are Unix servers in the world that won't accept two things. They won't accept capitals. That's why these are all small, lowercase. And they also won't accept anything that's longer than 32 characters. There's also no illegal characters in here. Forward slashes are forbidden. Backslashes are forbidden in naming on a lot of Unix servers. How do you know that, Verser? Oh, because I've been shooting all week for a client in New York, and the creative director wanted to go over all the shootings that we had done over the weekend. And I was like, oh, fine, my system will upload us all to your server, and you can have it all weekend long. My assistant had put a second, instead of a single underscore, there was 2 underscores in one of those spots, which made it 33 characters long, which makes it illegal. So he hit the go button to upload, 2 terabytes worth of images. Not the first one went up. Monday morning comes around, and I get this really, really, really nasty phone call from the creative director, and I lost them as a client. All because of one character. So this shit matters.
Is that the same assistant who did the light meter,
No, that's just my really super lazy assistant years ago. Nikayla, you had a question?
I was going to ask the same question.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say about this. So last thing I will say about this, I just said that's all I'm going to say about it, right? A lot of people's hesitancy to do this or adopt this stuff right now is the fact that you say to yourself, fuck, I've got all this work already. Do not worry about anything that you have done up to this point. Your old method is fine, however you deal with it. What I'm asking you to do, and you don't have to do this method, but you should do one. And you should do the one that you're going to use for the entire rest of your life. Because if you change your system in 5 years, then you've got 2 separate systems that you are then going to, when you're looking for something, you're going to have to look in 2 different ways, in 2 different places. You don't want that. So at any rate, this has worked for me forever. And so that's the only thing that I can throw out there. So the work that you have already done up until this point, a lot of people will use that as an excuse. Well, I can't adopt this right now. I've already got this system going, even though it doesn't work for me. I don't like it. I don't want to go back and rename all my old files. Do not set that as a criteria for doing it. Start today, and from this point on, make it right. Don't worry about the shit that isn't right. If when you get old and retired and you got nothing better to do, then you can go back and rename all your old files that you're not really looking at anyway. But don't let that stop you from doing this now, because otherwise this shit is just going to get worse. How many files do you guys shoot in a year? Any idea?
You said how many finals?
Say what?
How many what?
How many files do you shoot in a year? How many images?
Past like 2,000.
Oh, 2,000. Fuck, I've seen in a fashion shoot in one class shoot 2,000 in one day. I'm talking about the whole year, right? Let's say you shoot 50 days out of the year serious and you're doing 2,000 a pop. That's 1 million files. Yeah. If you have no structure or order for it, it's just a shit show. And oh, I know, all of you are religious about keywording, right? You go in and keyword everything, right? No, I know you don't. I know none of you do that. I don't do it. I mean, it's a great idea, but no one does it. Am I right? Yeah, I know. Sorry. Anyway. All right, so that's the last I'm going to say about this. Okay. So we are going to configure your Photoshop the way it should be configured, or at least what I'm going to do is we're going to go through all the preferences. We're going to have a conversation about the things that I think you should change, and then the things that are somewhat debatable. Right now, unless you've been in this, very few of you are going to have a Photoshop screen that looks like this. Don't worry, this is the retouching space that I use. It's actually the space that I use for everything now, but it came out of a retouching a space that I built for retouching. We are going to build this for you guys as well. You do not have to use this space, but I don't know anybody who's been through this class, who actually made it through this class, that's ever not continued to work with this space. So we will get to that part later, but I want to set up the preference part first, so that's where we're going to actually start. So ignore the what my screen actually looks like right here, because the part that we're going to do now has nothing to do with this. We will build this as a custom workspace today, and all of you guys will ultimately have this part. So that's where we're going to start right now. Yeah. Okay, so I need everybody to get into Photoshop right now. It doesn't matter to me right now which version of Photoshop you're using, except beta. So if you have got the beta version of Photoshop on your computer, that's fine. I've got mine on there as well. The reason I don't want you to use the beta, and I'm fine with you working in the beta part as long as you want, but the reason I don't want you to do what we're doing right now is we're going to set the preferences for Photoshop, and then we're going to save all of those so that if your preferences ever get corrupted, you can simply replace it with the folder that you used when you made a clean version of this. And there is the possibility, I don't know, but there's the possibility that in the beta version of Photoshop, there are additional preferences that don't exist here. So I want to do the most recent working version, released version of Photoshop, which is version 2026. So that's what they'll call it. It's 2026 unless you actually look at the drop-down menu here about Photoshop, in which case you'll see it's version 27. So there's been this mismatch in Photoshop forever. So the actual year, which is how they label it in the cloud, is always one number behind the version of the software when you actually look at it like this. So you will see it in the cloud as 2026, that's this year. But if you look at this part, it'll be version 27. I don't care if you're on 2026, 2025, even 2024. That doesn't matter to me, because at least I know that those preferences will not screw something up later on down the line. They will evolve. I just don't want to go backward. Does that make sense? Okay, so if everybody can get that open, we're going to start up at the very top. So it's in two different places for the, yes?
How do you open without opening the bottom?
Without opening the home screen?
Yeah.
That's going to be the first thing that we actually, no, that's going to be the first preference, one of the first things that we change. How fucking annoying is that? It's a storefront for Adobe. It's like, here, buy more shit from us, because we haven't given them enough of our money, right? No, we're getting rid of all of that. All right, so at any rate, for the Macintosh people, you come up to the word Photoshop at the very top by the little Apple menu, click on the drop-down menu, and come down to Settings, unless your Macintosh is a little bit older or you're working in a little bit older OS, it'll be called Preferences. So it's going to be one of those two. And then come over to General, and it'll open up this screen right here, and you'll see there's a interface on the left-hand side that will go through all of our preferences. If you're on Windows, you use the Edit menu, and at the bottom of your Edit menu, you will also have something that says, I think they still use Preferences as opposed to Settings, but that's where you will find it on Windows. But you should get this exact same screen. So does everybody have this screen up? Because we are going to go through it all right now so that you've got something to actually save. Yeah. All right, so up at the very top, start with General over on the top left-hand side up at the very top. You can leave the whole first part of this, of the color picker and all that kind of stuff, at its defaults. But to Eli's question, the first thing you want to uncheck is this auto show the home screen. That's the screen, the splash page that you get where Adobe's still trying to get you to, I don't know, give them more money. What can I tell you? For me, the next one down, I'm going to strongly suggest this. Again, I've had a lot of people not take the suggestion, and then they get really frustrated. So This is what happens when you do new document. Command N in Photoshop, or go up to the file menu down to file, new window. It just opens up a dialog box to say, what kind of new file do you want? And it's where you can put in the dimensions and the color space and all of that. The older version of it has a much deeper, better interface than the new version of it. The new version of it is just a lot of canned presets. The older version has things like you can create a document based on what's on the clipboard. It'll have exactly the sizing that's on your clipboard. You can do, if you have any other image open, you can create another image based on the dimensions of the image that you've got open, which is great for us when we start compositing and we're trying to keep things scaled the same way. So anyway, there's just a whole reason for this. So I personally feel really strongly about this. If you don't want to use this, that's fine. It just means you're going to have to wade through the other shit. So it's up to you. The next one down, use legacy free transform. Is that checked on yours already by default? I'm sorry?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so yeah, that actually might be a default. Beep when done, you definitely want to turn that on. So what this will do is, if you are running, like, say, a Gaussian blur filter on a 2 terabyte image, it can take 30 seconds, 40 seconds to actually run. This thing just beeps to tell you, okay, I'm done. So you can actually be doing something else. The next thing under is one of the biggest problems in all the setup, and it's turned on by default, export clipboard. The problem with exporting a clipboard is that no one uses that to begin with. No one uses the clipboard to get images out of Photoshop. You either export something or you save a file as something, whatever. Nobody uses the clipboard. The problem with using the clipboard is that you can actually copy like a gigabyte file onto the clipboard. It will hold it, but it robs you of RAM. So the way Photoshop works is that there is electronic memory in your computer, the RAM. You load a file into the RAM, then you're able to change the zeros and ones that are a part of that file. That's how your file changes, and then save it back. To function fast, you need a lot of RAM. You need a lot of open RAM, especially if you start to get into files that you're working on for a long time, because you're trying to remember a whole lot of history. All of this stays in RAM. When you copy something to the clipboard and it says here, you're going to say, yeah, I'm going to export the clipboard. It means when you quit Photoshop, that gigabyte of whatever you put in there stays in there, and no other program can use it. And it stays that way until you put something else on your clipboard or you restart your whole computer. It is a huge memory robber that has zero benefit. So definitely uncheck that thing for me. We're going to go to the next thing down, to interface. So in the interface coming down here, this is where you can control how the how Photoshop is, how like the tone of the palettes, that kind of stuff. There are people who would argue that white is actually the best thing to do to work on here, to actually make judgments about tone and color. I would argue that that's exactly the worst thing that you can do for this. Your eyes are adaptable. Your eyes actually automatically color correct stuff. So most of you know this, but if you don't, so have you ever done a picture in a room where there's a window that looks outside and there's a tungsten light in the room? So mixed lighting, right? Tungsten light is much warmer than daylight. So when you do that sort of scenario, you can color balance for the tungsten, which adds blue, but that makes the blue of your daylight even bluer. Or you can balance for the daylight part, which, to kill a lot of the blue, you're adding yellow, but that's what your tungsten light is. So it's this whole imbalance part. You know that certainly if you've ever shot color film back in the day, not negative film, but transparency film, you actually bought film based on the color of the light that you were shooting. But at any rate, your eyes do this automatically. Your eyes don't have any problem in seeing. You can look outside right now and say, okay, well, that's not blue to me. And then you can look inside at something that's being lit tungsten. What happens is your eyes look at the brightest thing that your eyes focus on, the brightest thing that is in your scene, and it neutralizes that, whatever that is. So when we make this background white like this, your eyes are looking at the background and it neutralizes it based on the color of the surround, not the color of your image. You want your eyes to be doing it on your image, not the surround. If you do the surround, your image can be completely off and you won't know. Or your image could be fine, but because you're color balancing on the surround because it's brighter than anything else in your image, you're going to get the wrong sense of what color is. Yes?
Why do they paint gallery walls white then? Shouldn't they be gray?
We're going to get into retouching environments, so hold that thought till just then, because you're absolutely right about that. Yeah. Anyway, but gallery situations are a shit show anyway. How many times have you turned up and, oh, the gallery on this side's done in tungsten, the one over there is done in daylight, and it's just like, yeah. Or they mix them.
Oh no.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's probably happening with these lights up here. Anyway, so if you can go to the black one, in theory, this should actually help you out. The darker, the better in this scenario. The problem with this is that you'll get dialog boxes in here that have black type on them, and you can't read them. So I always use the gray one that's right here that's next to it. While we're on this subject, though, I am going to ask you, how many of you have a cute little picture of your dog or your cat as your splash screen on your computer? Or something that Apple's done that's sort of like, I don't know, some like hallucination of color, or it's a picture of, I don't know, Mount Everest, or a picture of your dad, or, you know, something, all that kind of stuff. You don't want that. We'll talk about that during retouching, but it falls into the same category as this. All right, so anyway, the rest of this you can leave at its default. The workspace, this part does matter to me, and again, I keep trying to sell this. Very few people in this room are going to change this, but I'm going to try to convince you to. The two things that I change in here are this open document as tabs and enable floating document window docking. When we are, so most of you guys are used to working with tabs. You do it in browsers all the time, right? And most of you have left this behavior on in Photoshop. So if you open two files in Photoshop, one of them you'll actually see, and the other will simply be a tab. And if you click on the other tab, then that's the image that you see, and the one that you were looking at becomes a tab. And you can open up, you can have 8, 10, you can have unlimited number of tabs, right? That's fine as long as you're just working with a single image for the most part. But when we get into doing compositing, a lot of times you're going to have 3, 4, 5 images open. And you have to memorize what their file names are, which tab. Oh, I need to put this piece on that tab. And again, I'm not the memory guy. That does not work for me ever. So when I have 4 or 5 images open, I actually have 4 or 5 images open on my screen so that I can pull stuff from one image and put it onto another. I know exactly what I'm doing. So I turn this off. So the first one, open a window, open documents as a window, is just when you open it, it doesn't become a tab. The other one, this enable floating document window, what that is that even if you have the tab behavior turned off, if you bring your image up close to the very top of the Photoshop workspace, it will become a tab. So I turned both of those off. Again, you don't have to do this, but I'm just telling you, when we get into doing really complex compositing, this is going to interfere with you. You're not going to be happy about this part. The notifications in this part, I don't like. So it's gotten to the point now where if you hover over a tool in Photoshop, it'll give you the name. That's fine. But now it's also gotten to the point that it will add a little video, so showing you how to use the tool. If you don't know how to use the tool, then you want to leave this by its defaults. I hate when this shit comes up. So for me, I turn all of this off. I turn rich tooltips off, what's new off, and feature onboarding. I turn all of that shit off. So I turn off enable quiet mode. I turn all of that off. I do leave tooltips on because this will just give you the name of the tool that you're actually using. So that's just me. Going down to the next one, to the tools coming down, there's a couple of things in here that we do need to change that are important, and it's this one right down here, show reference point when using transform. You definitely want to enable that. What this does is when you use transform, this puts an anchor point right in the center. You can move the anchor point around as much as you want, but your transform takes place relative to that anchor point. The reason we want this thing turned on is that when we also get into compositing, we want to be able to transform in perspective, and you cannot do that without this anchor point showing. So we can show it later on, but you might as well just go ahead and turn it on right now. You'll be a whole lot happier if you do that part. The rest of this can stay at its normal part.
Enable flip panning.
Oh, that actually, I've turned that off, but that part actually doesn't really matter. This is a problem I'm having with this new software and a mouse, and a tablet. Right now, go ahead and leave that at its default, which is on.
Wait, we're leaving enable flip
Yeah, here.
panning.
I'm going to leave it on too.
And then it's not checked, so it doesn't matter, but I don't have the use paintbrush tip to erase while using a stylus eraser.
You don't have what?
The only one that's not checked on the
Oh.
options. Is it supposed to be?
I have no idea what that means.
Okay. Then it doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't. Okay, we're getting there, guys. Hang tight, and I'm going to try to get through this part. And believe me, I'm heading for another break as quick as I can. History log. So most of you have never used a history log. Anybody have any idea what it is?
Does it show like what changes you made?
It does. It does. It does. So if you turn it on, we're not going to leave ours on. There's a reason to turn this on. Anybody in this room ever consider a career in retouching? Okay, right? I mean, so, because again, you can start out as if you're competent and you're retouching, you can start it out at $50 an hour, which is considerably better than the $9 they're going to pay you at Starbucks, right? Or actually, Illinois has gotten a little bit better. We're now up to $15 an hour or something like that. Yeah, so anyway, the reason you want to use history log, if you turn it on, you have to enable it. You have 3 options for where you actually put this stuff. You can actually put it in the metadata of your image. So if you click on metadata, what this log will do, depending on what you have started out, so I'm going to start out with sessions only because that is the default. So what this will do is, if you've got it set to metadata and sessions only, it will timestamp every single time you open a file in Photoshop and every single time you close it. It doesn't do anything in between. It's just those 2 moves. So you open the file today at 6:01 and you closed it at 9:10. Those 2 stamps go into the metadata and that's it. Now, if you open it up again, it'll record that part again. But that's it. It doesn't really help you out a whole lot. You can also do this as a text file. And you notice if you click on text file, it'll open up this thing right next to it and says choose. And if you were to choose to actually open this up, this would be the history of the image that you're going to work on. What would you guys name the history log of an image you're working on?
2026.
You would use the exact name of the file, the whole raw file length, right? Frame number and all, because you could work on multiple files from a session, right? And the history of one would not apply to the other. So again, this is just another case where it's the same exact name that you've used for the raw file, for the Photoshop file, for the TIFF file, for the PNG file of it, for the JPEG file of it. This is now the text file. It's just got that text next to it. Yes?
Does that take up more, like, if you do the text file, if you're working on a large file that has, like, I don't know, 50 layers or something, is the text file really large in size?
No. Text files are tiny. Really tiny. It's got nothing to do with the size of your file. It's got everything to do with how much work you do.
But if you did a lot of work, it could get
Yeah,
to be
don't worry. We're going to get to that part. So at any rate, I'm not going to do this right now because I'm not going to, but that's how you would ultimately do it. And then both. So you can do both where it will actually embed all the changes that you've done, the history in your metadata of your file, but also create a text file separately for it. So I would never suggest doing both. I don't think putting all of this information in the metadata of your file is worthwhile. I just don't. So I would do a text file only. However, you have 3 options for what you're keeping in your history. So session only is just open and close. That's it. If you then go to concise, what concise will do is it will, if you pick a tool, it will say, okay, they picked the brush tool. But then that's it. And then you go to the next tool. Oh, they picked the eraser tool. Oh, then they added a layer. Oh, then they picked the marquee tool, or and that's it. It's just a very concise list of it, but it's at least a little fuller, whatever. The trick is, if you are a retoucher and you're doing this for money, you want to actually pick detailed, because what detailed will do is, so it'll do the opening and closing. It will do any tool that I pick. But when I've got a graphics tablet like this and I start to do this, it'll say stroke. And then this, another stroke. This dot, stroke, every single move that you make is recorded in this history. Everything. And the reason that is of value to you is, as you're retouching, this thing will get, a serious retouching, the stuff that I do with all the compositing in it can easily, it can take me 3 or 4 days to actually do something, a single image, right? And I'm working on it constantly all day. So you get your retouching job and you've bid it out at $2,000 to do the retouching job, and you give them the work and they look at it and they say to you, well, this doesn't look like you did that much. I mean, it was exactly what we talked about doing, but I don't think that's worth $2,000. I think it's only worth $1,000. So here, I'm going to give you $1,000. And you whip out your history log file that's at least this big, if not bigger, and you throw it down on the desk and you say, that's what I did to your file. Give me my fucking money. Because it's just pages and pages of what you did, and they're thinking, oh, well, you didn't do anything that big. My kid could do that. I mean, well, then get your kid to do it. So, but the only reason I would ever keep a history log, because there's no advantage in going back to it for yourself, to be really honest with you, it would be for working client. That's the only reason I would do it. I don't keep history logs for any of the work I do. It doesn't work like Lightroom, where you can actually leverage it and go back in history. You can't. So that's what that's all about. So this next thing, content credentials.
We're leaving that unchecked.
You are leaving it unchecked. Content credentials. So this is new. This is also in beta, and it's actually the one underneath it, both of these guys right here. What's happening in digital right now is, with the advent of AI, a lot of people are very worried, nervous, skeptical, have mixed emotions, feelings about AI-generated content. And so to sort of, to try to get a handle on that stuff, to be able to discriminate about what is real, for lack of a better way of putting it, and what has been artificially generated. They have now created this credential system, and basically what it is that if you are working on a file and you do anything that is AI in nature, any generation that would be done, I don't think it does like selections. I don't think it remembers that kind of stuff. But at any rate, certainly any content that would be generated and that you make it a part of your image gets tagged with this credential. And there's a lot of people who are supporting this now. So Adobe is doing it, Nikon, Canon, all the big Canon companies, all those people are actually supporting it. Google's doing it, Microsoft is doing it. They're all, so it's this sort of like open source effort to try to be able to give people a tool that says, oh, if you suspect this, or if you want to, you don't suspect it, but if you just want to make sure that nothing in this image has been generated by AI, or there's no content that's AI, whatever, you've got this system where you can check the credentials for it. It's still a work in progress right now. So for the time being, I'm going to leave this off. If this changes, then fine. But I think they're rushing this right now. It's still in beta in this, and as a beta element, it should stay in the beta version of this. It should not be in the working version of this right now. So that's just my feeling about this. I'm going to stay on top of this. If it changes, or if you have some compelling reason that you feel like, oh, I really need, if we're going to do that, whatever. I mean, however you feel about it. I just want you to know what it is, how I feel about it, the way I'm approaching it right now. So for what that's worth. File handling, you can leave this all at its default right now. Export, you can leave this also all at its default right now with one exception. No, it's not going to be in here right now. So we're good leaving this exactly where it is right now. Performance. So this thing depends on the amount of RAM that you have in your computer. So this computer that I have right now has 24 gigabytes of RAM in it. Most of you have got somewhere between 8 and 16 would be my guess. So the amount of RAM, again, what RAM is, I'm going to do a quick little drawing right here, because we're going to come back to this in just a second. I'm going to pause this video because you won't see this and you probably won't hear it either. And performance here, if you've got, the standard is 70%. Now, the thing is you cannot do 100% of your memory to Photoshop. Your computer needs RAM to work itself. The OS, just the fact that you can turn it on, takes up RAM. But if you've got a lot of RAM, because there's people who will have computers that have 64 gigabytes of RAM, 128 gigabytes of RAM. If you have a lot of RAM in your computer, you can boost this thing up considerably. And the more you can boost it up and dedicate RAM to Photoshop, the faster it will work. This is the reason we don't export clipboards, is because the clipboard robs us from this. But here's the question that I'm going to ask that nobody wants to hear. So when you guys are working in Photoshop, how many of you guys have a browser open? Usually, right? How many of you guys also have Spotify playing, right? How many of you guys also have, I don't know, probably a copy of Word or something else open? How many have, I don't know, whatever else you guys have, whatever. The problem with that is all of those things require RAM, and they are all stealing it from Photoshop. And when that happens, your Photoshop slows down, and there's no getting around it. Don't worry. This isn't the real thing that's going to upset you. We're going to get to that next in just a second. Kayla?
You ever get that box where it like shows you all the applications you have open and it says that Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Lightroom have paused and you have to force quit the other applications in order to resume?
So what'll happen is that if certain things are open, programs that are open that are using it, Bridge is notorious for this. If you have loaded something in Bridge to browse and then you open a file into Photoshop and then you actually want to quit Bridge, Bridge will not quit because it knows it's already got this relationship, this link. It knows that you had something and opened it in Photoshop, and until you quit Photoshop as well, it will not quit. Is that what you're talking about?
I guess so, yeah.
Okay. At any rate, my point being is if you want your Photoshop to be at its fastest, browse on your phone. Play music on your phone. Don't have anything running on your computer other than Photoshop, and you'll notice the difference. Callie?
So RAM and memory are two
Same
different
thing. No, same exact thing. Same thing. Same exact thing.
Got it.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so at any rate, if you've got a big old machine that's got like a ton, you can actually boost this up. Never take this up to 100%, but you could easily boost it up to 80, 85, but don't run anything else. Okay, so anyway, that's what's going on here. The rest of this, you can leave it at its default until we get over to here. Use graphics processor. It is on by default. This one matters, but you can run into trouble with this one. So we get into Liquify. This is where it usually shows up the worst, but if you've never worked in Liquify before, that's fine. But if you have ever worked in Liquify before and all of a sudden your image starts breaking apart, it starts tiling, you'll start to see it looks almost like your image, it almost looks like a checkerboard.
Yes.
Yeah, if that ever happens. What's going on is it's a conflict with this graphics processor right here. And that will continue to happen as long as this processor is on. So you have to come here to this. You need to turn off the graphics processor, go back and finish the work that you're trying to do in Liquify, save the file, and then come back and turn this thing back on. because otherwise liquefy will. Now, this doesn't work for everybody's computer, and it doesn't work in every version of every file for liquefy, but it happens enough that you need to know about this, and this is where the problem is. So, in terms of the history states, we're going to leave this at 50. You could add more to that, but again, the more history states that you do, the more you tie up in RAM with just history. There's other solutions that we use to sort of extend the history or being able to go back in history that don't require us to bump up these whole number of history states. Almost there, guys. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Are there ways to get more RAM on your computer?
No. Well, that's not true. If you have a relatively new Apple, no. Everything is soldered to the solder board. If you have a Windows machine, yes, you can. If you have an older Mac, yes, you can. And if you get any of the Mac desktops, all of those are upgradable. I'm sorry?
Would a hard drive help or no?
No. No, it's fixed. Yeah, sad. Okay, next one down, image processing. So in this one, by default, I don't know, what's the select subject and background? Is that set to local on yours?
Device.
It's set to device, yeah. Yeah. You want to change this to cloud. And then I do all of these down here instead of faster. I do them as more stable.
Is that gonna be an issue saving it to cloud once we're done at Columbia?
No, not at all. Not at all. So what this is when you use the AI selection tools to select subject or to select background, what happens is that if you have cloud enabled and you're actually have an internet connection, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be Columbia College. It can be any internet connection wherever you are. It will send a copy of your file up to Adobe servers. They process the selection there, and then they send that back down to you. Now, if you are not connected to the internet, then this will just default back and do it on your device. Even more, you can change this when you actually do select subject inside of Photoshop. You have the option to change this as well there. All this does is say, well, what one do you want to be the default? So when you select subject inside of Photoshop, if I've got it set to cloud, that's the one that it's filled in on the little drop-down menu. If I want to go to device, or I want to see what both of them do, I can always change that inside. But it just saves a step. For me, more often than not, the selections that are done by Adobe servers are better than the ones that happen locally, but that's not always true. So anyway, that's all this is about. I like more stability. I don't worry about speed here in this part, so that's why I would put on this. Scratch disking, we're getting there, guys. How many of you guys have had the worst error in the world come up? Scratch disk is full, and there is nothing you can do. They should just really be honest about it and just say, and you're fucked.
I have to like plug in my hard drive or something for my scratch disk. It's so irritating.
Oh, so I'm going to tell you what scratch disking really is, and this is, so remember we were talking about changing the RAM, the amount of RAM. I said, well, that might upset you, but this one's really going to upset you. So here. So back to our, again, I'm going to pause the recording again because you won't see it and you won't probably hear it, so. So, to avoid the scratch disk problem, you want to come out, so for the Macintosh people, this is the easiest way to do it. You want to come out to your Finder, so out into, where we can actually see our hard disks. Most of you, I'm going to hide everybody else so that you can actually just see what my desktop looks like. I'm going to get rid of all my windows as well. So I can actually see my hard disks right here. Apple has actually changed this, so by default, you don't see yours, which makes it hard to get to something to actually find the information on it. If you want to be able to see your hard disks, and I actually think you should be able to see them, simply come up to the Finder, the word that says Finder in the top left-hand corner, click on it, and come down to the drop-down menu. Modern OSs are saying settings. Your older one will say preferences. Open this up. And in the General tab, you want to click all of these. You want to see the servers that are connected to your computer. You want to see the CDs and the external disks and your hard disks. And when you do that, you'll actually see your Macintosh HD sitting right there. Click on your Macintosh HD and then either hit Command I or go to the File menu and come down to Get Info. And this thing will open up and it will show you right here what size hard drive you actually have in your computer and how much free available space that you've got. So if you look at my screen right here, it says that my capacity of my Macintosh, this is my internal hard drive, my capacity of that is 994.66 gigabytes. It's a terabyte hard drive. The reason it doesn't say a terabyte that is that I'm losing some just overhead just to have the shit on the hard drive that needs to be on the hard drive for it to function. So you'll never see this as exactly, but anyway, that's what it is. In terms of the available space that I have on here, I've got 211.43 gigabytes of available space. So here is the rule of thumb. This is the thing that you need to write down right now, and this is the thing that you need to look at on your computer to find out just how much trouble that you're in. You need a minimum of 10% free space for your computer to function normally. On top of that, if you are doing serious retouching, you probably want 40 to 50 gigabytes on top of that for your scratch disk. So in my case, 10% of a terabyte would be 100 gigabytes, plus another 40 would be 140 gigabytes is how much free available space that I want. Now, a lot of you guys have computers that are 250 gigabytes in size. Well, that means you need 25 gigabytes of free space, but then you still need to add that 40 on there for a scratch disk. You still need 65 gigabytes of free space. And I wouldn't bet everything I own, but I would bet a lot of what I own that there's not a person in here who's got 10% free space on their computer. Not even close. You are killing yourselves. Killing yourselves. You have got to go into your computer and get rid of, you've got to offload a ton of shit onto an external hard drive and get it off of your internal hard drive to make this stuff work. Yes?
Wait, where on here, sorry, do we see what percentage?
So, did you click on your hard drive? Then did you, I'm sorry?
I'm on that.
Oh, so you see this right here, right? So do you see, it says capacity?
Yeah.
What's your capacity?
Yours.
It's the same as mine? Fine, how much is your available space?
417 gigabytes.
Oh, then you have plenty.
Okay, question though, because for Jonathan's class, we had this compositing assignment, and I offloaded a bunch of stuff before I started the assignment because I knew the scratch disk error was gonna come off, and I had 400 gigabytes, and it was a 2 gigabyte file, and it still did the scratch disks are full. And I don't know if it was just the way I was editing it, or.
It shouldn't.
Okay.
That should not have ever happened.
Okay. That's the only time it's happened, but I was proactive about making sure I had space,
Right.
and then it still happened.
Oh. Anyway, okay, so guys, again, the things that you're looking for to free up space, movies, videos, that's the number one thing. That's always the biggest thing. So image files are next, but you got to get that stuff off. That's all I can say. Okay. There is something that we have missed here, and I'm looking for it again here really quickly, guys. So sorry, let me just check because there's something that I've been looking. Oh, yeah. Can you go back to file handling really quickly? One thing that we didn't have on here that I want to talk about is it's on the upper panel on the right-hand side. This automatically save recovery information every. You want to definitely enable that, and then you can click on the drop-down. I do 10 minutes. You can do 5 if you want to. Anyway, 10 minutes seems to work for me. So what'll happen here is that if for some reason your computer crashes, if you've got this enabled, you will not lose more than 10 minutes of your last edit. So this is just, again, it's not a backup. It's not going to save you in like every situation. But if all of a sudden Photoshop freezes and you have to restart it, whatever, again, and let's say you've been working on your image for 3 hours and you haven't bothered to save it, you will not lose anything except for the last 10 minutes of your edit if you've got this actually enabled. What will happen is that when you start up Photoshop again, the file will open up immediately again and it'll be tagged as recovery. It's just, there's no overhead for this. It's just a smart thing to actually have on there. So I'm going to throw that out there. Cursors now, we're going to come down the one that's right under scratch discs. We're almost done in here. In the cursor part, you want to actually set the normal brush tip. You do not want to use a full-size brush tip. The problem with full size is that if you, whenever you're using a soft brush, you know if you're using a completely soft brush, at the very edge of your brush where it ends, you can barely see any ink at all. It's like fading out to not being your brush anymore. If you use the full tip, it'll actually put the circle around even that area where you're beginning to not see the brush anymore at all. The brush will always feel too big for you if you have this on. Normal brush tip is much more intuitive. It's what you'll expect to be working. You also want to add this show crosshair at brush. You want to check show crosshair in brush tip. What this will do is it'll put a small little X at the very center of all of your tools, not just your brushes. And when you're doing really specific cloning, replacing of one thing to another, having that sort of precision is something you definitely want. In the other cursors over on the middle part, you want to make those precise. Nobody in the world uses a brush that looks like a paintbrush. Nobody uses a fill that looks like a little bucket. Nobody uses any of that shit. All the stuff that we do here is far too precise to be thinking that somehow, well, what part of the icon is really the center of this? Anyway, just precise is what you want on here. Transparency and gamut, we're almost there, guys. The gamut warning that's on here, you can use Photoshop to pre-check. Most of you guys print, right? Or have printed? Anybody in here never printed? Okay, so most of you are aware of the fact that when you go to print something, that you can have much more saturated color on your screen than you can actually get in a print. We're going to talk about why that is, but you can use Photoshop to actually show you the difference. So you can say to Photoshop, show me what my printer is not going to be able to print. And that is called gamut. So the difference in the gamut of your screen, which is large, and the gamut of a printer, which is smaller, that difference you want to have a way to say, well, so what am I going to lose? What's not going to get printed? That's what gamut warning is all about. So, but the default is middle gray. Nobody can spot middle gray on an image, so you want to change this. To change it, you simply click on that warning. You're going to come over. This opens up the color picker. You are going to select the R value, so right across from the letter R, there's a space where you can type in a value. Select that space and type in a 0. Then if you hit your tab key, it will take you to the green space. Type in 255, hit the tab key, and finally go to the blue value and put in 0. It will give you this shocking fluorescent green, which is what you want, because you will be able to see that on an image. That's what you want your gamut warning to be. Units and rulers, we are going to leave those as they are. Yes?
Can you go back to the green?
Yeah. So 0 red, 255 green, 0 blue. Are you good?
Yep, thank you.
Yep. Units and rulers, you can leave them as they are. Grids and you can leave those all as they are. Plugins, this is the one that I did want you to actually change. You need to enable developer mode. So just check that part on. The rest of this you can leave as it is. You don't need to turn anything else on. Type, we're not going to change anything here. Enhanced controls, we're not going to change anything here. But technology previews, you definitely want to enable preserve detail 2.0 upscale. And if you have, go ahead and put on your precise color management for HDR. Most brand new Macintoshes are using HDR displays, although they call it something else. They call it like XDR. I forget what they call it, but anyway, it's an HDR display. So if you don't have one, this thing will not do anything to your computer. If you do have one, this thing will take advantage of the technology that you have in your new display. So it's worth just turning on. Yes.
Is there a reason to enable content where tracing tool is off?
Yeah, I don't use this, so I don't even know what it is. Yeah, so there you go. Is it on or off by default?
It was on by default.
It's on by default? Yeah. I'll look it up someday and figure it out. But anyway, yeah, I definitely have precise previews for 16-bit documents on. Open JPEGs without a background layer. I don't know why you would do that part. I don't know why that really matters, so I'm just going to leave that off. And then use the enable modern user interface. I think that's a stretch for Adobe to call this a modern interface, but nonetheless, I'm going to say okay to that. And then we're actually done on this, but we're not finished with our preferences. We have 2 things left to do, and then we will take a break, I promise. So what's left on this is actually, I take it back, we have 3 things left. So you need to come back to the very same thing again. So again, if you're on Windows, you're on the edit menu near the bottom. If you're on Macintosh, you're back up to the Photoshop up by the little Apple menu, down to settings again, but now you need to come all the way down to Camera Raw. It's not a part of the rest of this whole panel that we were just working in, but there's a few things that we need to set up in Camera Raw. So when Camera Raw setting opens up, again, in the general part up here in the very part, at the top part, again, I am going to use, make sure that you just have Show Rich Tooltips is on. When I go into Camera Raw, I prefer to have my thumbnails on the left-hand side as opposed to underneath the bottom part. You can change that with this orientation. If you like your thumbnails on the bottom, leave it at horizontal. If you want them off to the side, left-hand side, go to vertical. The rest of this you're fine on, and that's fine. Down at the very bottom, this Use Legacy Undo Shortcuts. So depending on how long you have worked in Apple products or Adobe products, the conventional for Photoshop forever was if you did Command-Z, you went 1 step back in history. If you hit Command-Z again, you went 1 step forward in history, and you would just go back and forth. Command-Z would take you back and forth between those 2 steps endlessly. It would never go all the way back in history. If you wanted to go all the way back in history, you had to add the Option key. So you would do Command-Option-Z would take you back 1 state. Command-Option-Z again would take you back the next state. Command-Option-Z, now the next state, and back and back and back and back and back. So 2 years ago, Adobe decided to just change that, and they flipped it. So now if you use the modern version, you don't change anything. If you just do Command-Z repeatedly, you will go continually back in history until you run out of history. If you want to do the back and forth, back and forth, back and forth of only those 2 history states, that's when you use Command-Option-Z to do that. It's frustrating. If you've been working in Photoshop for 35 years and you've done something for that long, I hate the new version of it. So that's what this Use Legacy Undo Shortcuts is about. You can use either one that you want. It's just a way, if you hate the new version, the way it works, that's how to change it. Go back now to file handling to come down. In this one, you want to disable all the file formatting support. It used to be, so for all of them I disabled it, it used to be that you could open a JPEG or a JPEG or a TIFF. You could actually open it up in Camera Raw, which defeats the purpose because Camera Raw is designed to process raw data. Once you have a JPEG or a TIFF file, it's a baked file. But there's controls that existed in Camera Raw that people wanted to use. People wanted to use white balance, and you should be able to do white balance a baked file. So anyway, so they used to make it so that you could open files that were not raw files in Camera Raw. Now you've actually got a Camera Raw filter that sits inside of Photoshop that makes opening them in Camera Raw a moot point. You don't need these anymore. So you might as well just disable them all. In terms of performance here, again, this is another where you can leave the graphics processor. It's going to be set to auto here, but this is where you can run into that selecting problem. But rarely have I ever seen that get glitchy in Camera Raw. It's usually only in Photoshop. In terms of the defaults here, you can actually set yours to enable HDR editing if you've got it. Again, if you don't have it, it won't have any impact on it. This raw default will actually set up in a different place. It'll just show up here, so don't worry about that. In terms of the workflow here, this is where things do matter. So your workflow, how many people in here are working in ProPhoto RGB? Anyone? If you are, you have to be in 16-bit. Now, if you are working, how many people here start in Lightroom and work in Lightroom, do anything in Lightroom, and then come into Photoshop? So most of you guys are bringing your shit into Photoshop, likely in ProPhoto RGB. So we need to look at your Lightroom preferences because by default, that's how it's set up. The problem that we have is that ProPhoto, it's a color space. It is so big, you have to be in 16-bit, which means your files double in size, and it means anything that you do to them also takes twice as long. So if it takes 10 seconds to actually do a Gaussian blur on an 8-bit file, the 16-bit version of it will take 20. So there is no fundamental reason to actually be working in ProPhoto RGB or 16-bit, in my opinion. I don't. Scanning is a different story, but for this part, this is all I can say about that. You cannot see ProPhoto RGB space. The best monitors in the world right now are showing you Adobe RGB. So why would you have a space that has color in it that's not only bigger than your monitor can show you, but it's actually bigger than human eyes can see? And because it is so big, you need to do 16-bit, which is doubling your file size, to actually manage it without tearing your image apart. So my suggestion, set this to Adobe RGB and the bit depth to 8. Image resizing here doesn't matter at all because you're not resampling your pixels here, so you can ignore this altogether. You would never do output sharpening when you're developing a raw file because you don't know what your output is. If your output is going to be a billboard, that's a very different output sharpening that you would use than if it's going to be a small print that goes on the wall. It's going to be even a different one output sharpening that you would use if it's simply going to be on screen on your website. All of those are completely different. Why on earth would you do the sharpening at the very beginning of the game? You have no idea where your file's going to go. So anyway, that's off. And then finally, how many people in here work with smart objects? That will change next week. So I'm going to just say, go ahead and enable open in Photoshop, opening a smart object. You can always change this behavior in Photoshop, but that's the default that I want you to actually use. Finally, technology previews. Go ahead and check all new AI features to turn those on. Say okay to that. We're almost there, guys. Almost there. Edit menu for everyone now, down to color settings. When this opens up, this is the worst injustice that Photoshop has ever done, because most of you, when you open this up right now, should have something that looks like this, North American Pre-Press General Purpose 2, and you've got sRGB as your color space. Is that what you all have? Yeah, this is a nightmare. You've got a camera that'll shoot a really big, beautiful color space, and then without knowing it, you bring it into Photoshop and it crushes that space into this little thing that you can actually print. And if that's not bad enough, if you look down here at the bottom where it says profile mismatching, missing and all of that, it turns all of the warnings off. So when you do this to your file, and you don't know that you just crushed your beautiful big old file, Photoshop doesn't tell you that that just happened. And then when you save the file, there's no way to recover that other than to redevelop the raw file all over again. That shit is just gone. So wrong color space, all the warnings are turned off, horrible. And this is the default. So you want to change this from North American Pre-Press, from North American General Purpose to North American Pre-Press. This is another indignity, right? Why on earth would they get them so close to each other in name? right? But anyway, this is the one that you want, because when you do that, it changes this now to have Adobe RGB as your working space, which is what we want, but it also turns on all of your profile mismatching management warnings. And you want to say okay to that. Last thing, up to the edit menu, down to toolbar. And in toolbar, this is where you can control what's sitting over here. So if you end up having a tool go missing, which can happen, you want to come here and then click on Restore Defaults. But this also allows you to customize your toolbar. So let's say that you actually never used the polygonal lasso tool. You can grab this thing and pull it out, and it will no longer be in your tool dropdown. If I go ahead and say done on this, that guy is gone. So to get it back, if it's missing, go back to keyboard, sorry, not that, toolbar, and just restore your defaults. But you can also move these things around. You can actually build your own fly out tool parts here. I mean, all of this is customizable. One last thing, and then we're done. So I'm going to hit done there. Come down to keyboard shortcuts. And on keyboard shortcuts, you've also got another place where you have to check that use legacy undo shortcuts if that's what you actually want to do. And then say OK. Whew. That was a lot, right? And I know everybody in this room is saying, I don't ever want to do that again. So as soon as we come back from break, I'm going to show you how you don't ever have to do that again. All right, so I've got 242. Again, we'll be generous. Let's just call it 245, hard 10, be back at what would that be, 355? Yeah, 5 minutes of 4. I'll see you then. It gets better. Okay, so now we're actually going to build the custom workspace. So you're going to build the space that you are looking at right now. I'm going to show you how to get through it. It doesn't take us that long, but the reason I want you to have this, number one, is that this is what you'll be looking at for all the lectures. This is what will be on all of the videos. But most importantly, this shows you, it gives you all of the information that you need to be able to see at any one given time. So it's important. Does that mean you have to use this space? No, it does not. If you want to continue to use whatever space, fine, that's all fine. But I do want you to go ahead and make this space so that if you realize coming down the line that you possibly made a mistake and you really should have built it to begin with, then you've already got it. Okay, so I'm going to start the way most of you guys all are right now. Most of you guys are probably working with the default space. So to change workspaces, you come up to the window menu that I'm at right now. You come down to workspace. And then down in workspace, there are 5 essential, not essential ones, there are 5 different workspaces. These are all canned workspaces. These are in every version of Photoshop. Photoshop has created, or Adobe has created these spaces, and it's for different tasks. So Essentials is sort of a grab bag for everybody. Motion would be for people who are doing video, painting, obviously painting, photography, whatever. These are different setup for different things. We're going to do a custom one. That is designed and set up for just retouching. So I am going to go back to the workspace that most of you guys have, and that's where we're going to start so that you can see, we'll go from what you guys actually have to what I'm ultimately going to, hopefully that you end up having. So if you click on Essential, if I click on Essentials, you'll see it changes my workspace. However, when you change workspaces in Photoshop, it's a 2-step process. That was only the first step. The second step to do this is you need to come back to the exact same place, up to the window, down to Workspace, And then you'll notice this reset has actually changed its label to be the same workspace, new workspace that you actually picked. So you pick the workspace that you want, but then you need to reset it. And that's how you do it, is just by clicking on reset. And this is what most of you guys have, correct? Looks something like this? Okay. So to start off with, the first thing that you need to do is click on your window menu and make sure that down at the very bottom, application frame is checked. Make sure that application frame is checked. What application frame is that you don't need to do this, but just watch my screen really quickly. If I click on this area that's near the word Adobe Photoshop, and I move this around, all of the palettes are all connected. They're all connected to this workspace. If you have this unchecked, it's like freeform. You can see through the space. Nothing is connected. If I move one thing, nothing else moves with it. It's just not a good way to actually be working. So again, I'm up into the window menu down to make sure application frame is checked. If you then grab your application frame, just so that you know part of the reason this works so well, grab it. So I typically grab right around where it says Adobe Photoshop 2026 or whatever yours says. If you grab and move this down and sort of like off to the side, it is actually going out of my frame. If I wanted to refill my frame and be exactly fitting to my frame, no matter what frame that is, simply come up to that same area that's right next to where it says 2026 or 2025, whatever, and just double click really fast. It will jump back up and it will fill your entire screen. Now, if you've got two screens that are different sizes, if you move this from one to the other, you'll actually end up double clicking. It will fit any size screen. So it's just a really good, quick shortcut to know to get your maximum amount of workspace in it. So anyway, that's where we're going to start. So I've got my essentials done. It's big. I've got my application frame, and now we're actually going to rebuild the workspace. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to start over here. There's two little icons that sit over right next to the color tab. If you click on the top one, it'll give you a flyout menu that says history and comments. You want to grab the history tab and tear it off and leave it hanging out over on the other side of your screen just a little bit. You've also now got comments, but comments is actually still anchored to this group of tabs over here. I want to get rid of comments. To do it, you grab the comment tab, tear it off as well, and now you'll have a little bitty X that sits up in the top left-hand corner. Click on that little bitty X and it gets rid of it. If for some reason you got rid of something that you want to get back, all of the palettes are right under the window menu. Click on the drop-down the window menu drop-down, and you can come down to comments, and it brings it right back, and you can put it wherever you want it. But in our case, we're not going to use it, so I'm going to get rid of that guy right here. Then we're going to do similar things for a lot of this. I'm going to grab the color tab, and I'm going to tear it off. Nobody uses it. Get rid of it. I'm also going to grab the swatches tab, tear it off. We do occasionally use swatches, but not enough to keep it in our real estate, in our layout at all times. The few times that you're going to use it, you just go up to the window menu, down to swatches, and it's there. But in our case, we are going to tear it off and get rid of it. I'm going to do the same thing with gradients. I'm going to grab this, tear it off, and get rid of it. Now, I am going to get rid of patterns, but not yet. And the reason I don't want to do patterns yet is I want to anchor properties to the top of my application frame. If I tear properties off, sometimes that doesn't happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move properties up here first because I know patterns is anchored. So grab the properties tab and move it up, and when you get the tabs really close to each other, you'll see you get a blue line that goes around the entire top palette. That's telling you that this properties now is going to be anchored in the top palette. There's three palettes here. There's where properties was coming from, layers, and then patterns. So we're just bringing it up to the top palette set and let go. And then you're going to grab patterns and tear it off and get rid of it. This way, properties is now anchored as the very top palette instead of just floating, which is what we want. We're then going to grab libraries and drag that up into properties. And again, when libraries gets up and you get the full blue line around it, it will anchor in place. But now when we save our workspace, whatever tab is frontmost is what you'll get. We use properties way more than libraries. So you want to select the properties tab so that when we save this thing, it's the one that's sitting on top. Libraries is going to be there behind it, but we want properties up top and visible. How many of you guys use the adjustments tab? Yeah, there's no reason for it. All the adjustment tabs right here all sit right down here as well at the very bottom of your layers palette. However, yeah, so I'm going to just grab the adjustments tab, pull it out, and get rid of it. Now, what's left is we've got properties, libraries at the very top. We've got layers, channels, and paths at the bottom. I want channels visible always. So I'm going to grab the channels tab, and I'm going to tear it out as well. So layers is going to be what I see first. And so I want layers to be upmost. I don't want to set paths as the upmost part. But I am going to, well, we'll change size of thumbnails in just a minute. So now I'm going to actually build the other side, the left side of all of this. So we need a tab, a palette that's not visible yet. So come up to the window menu and come down to Info. And Info will open up, and you want to click and tear the tab off as well. And then we want to anchor this right over at the very top of the tool palette. So grab the Info palette and drag it over, and you need to get it close. When you see the blue line that goes all the way down, then you'll know it's being anchored there. So now I want to put history underneath Info. The problem is that you would think you could grab the history palette and just drag it down and somewhere get underneath it. You can't. Your info palette is divided into 3 sections. There's the visible one that's right here. There's a spacer, and then there's another space for when you actually start to add more info readouts right here. This black line at the very bottom is the actual bottom of the palette. So grab your history tab, drag this up on top of this, and get close to that little black line right underneath and let go. And now your history is underneath the info tab. And then finally, we are going to grab channels, and we want it underneath history, but now it works the way you would imagine it to work. Grab the channels part, drag it down underneath the history palette. You'll see you get the solid blue line, let go, and now we've got this side is built the way I want it. However, this is showing too much history and not enough channels. So if you hover your cursor right over the area where the channels tab touches the lower part of history, you'll get a double-headed arrow, and you can click and you can actually drag this up to balance this better. Finally, the last thing that I want to do on this, well, a couple things. I want to add actions to this as well. So come over to your Windows menu, come down and do actions. It will actually open up along with a comment section. Tear the tab off for actions, get rid of comments again, grab actions, bring it over on top of your history palette, make sure that you get the blue line all the way around it, let go, and then click so that history is what is in the front. And then give me time to plug my laptop in. Okay, almost done. Last thing that we want to do on this is that we want to have really big previews of stuff. So we've got to change a couple of things. I'm going to click on Path first. So click on it to make it active. If you look at the little hamburger, the menu that's just to the right of it, and click on that, you'll get a flyout menu, and you want to come down to panel options, and then you want to click the thumbnail next to the biggest of the preview. You guys can actually see a lot of valuable information in the thumbnails in these palettes. You want them as big as you can get them. It's just, trust me on this one. Go ahead and say okay to that. Then click on the Layers tab, and you're gonna do the same thing. You're gonna click on the little hamburger to the side, come down to Panel Options, Radio button next to the biggest thumbnail, say okay. Then you're gonna go over to Channels and do the same thing. So Channels on the right, on the left-hand side, click on the hamburger, Panel Options, click the radio button next to the biggest of the thumbnails and say okay. And then finally, in History, we don't have previews like that, but we need to change 2 options in there. Click on the little hamburger, flyout menu, come down to History Options. You want to automatically create first snapshot will already be checked, but do you want to add a check mark for automatically create new snapshot when saving? That one's critical. And then this show new snapshot dialog by default, you want to go ahead and enable it. It has not worked for the last couple of years. People are me included, are up in arms about this, but Photoshop will eventually get around to it. But go ahead and check it right now. Who knows when they'll actually enable it. And say okay. So this is now our workspace that we're actually gonna do. Sorry. And so we need to save this. Wow, my text stuff is just going nuts. Okay, we need to save this. Up to the window menu, down to workspace, down to new workspace. A dialog will open up and you want to save this. So you're going to call it, I would call it retouching. That's what I want. I'm not going to type mine in because I've already got 1,000 of these. But just put in retouching and hit save. And then you can close that up. It'll close it up itself. And then when you want to go back and forth between stuff, again, if we go up to the window space, come down to workspace, you see that Essentials is actually still selected, but I've got my retouching workspace if I had saved it. So I'm going to pick my retouching, my latest one, number 30. Again, when you change spaces, you've got to actually reset them. So back up to Windows, down to Workspace, and then reset retouching. And this is what your workspace should look like. If you want to go back to Essentials, click on Workspace, come back to Essentials, and then again, you'll see this is not my Essentials. It doesn't look like it, even though I've picked it, because I need to reset it. So reset it, and then that's what it looks like. So I'm going to go back to our retouching one. This is, again, what I always use. And we are off to the races. Okay, so we've now got our, and this is actually saved with all of your presets. So now we've actually got a great preset stuff to actually work with. I need you to quit Photoshop right now. So come up to the Photoshop and come down to quit, or however you quit Photoshop. So go ahead and stop this part. So I need to tell you how to reset. So when would you reset your preferences? When you have wonky behavior in Photoshop, you pick the brush tool and you get the lasso tool. You try to paint with your foreground color and paint your background color. You try to do something, things are just not working. Your first move is to restart Photoshop. If the problem doesn't go away, you restart your computer and then restart Photoshop. If the problem doesn't go away, you have to reset your preferences. To reset your preferences, I need everybody to do this with me, but when we get to the part where you can say, yeah, do it, don't do it, because we just built a brand new virgin set of preferences for you guys, and if we reset them, you're going to throw all that work away. So to do a reset for the Windows people, you need to hold down, sorry. For the Windows people, you hold down Alt, Control, and Shift. For the Macintosh people, you hold down Command, Option, Shift. So I'm going to do Shift, Option, and Command. And then while you're holding those keys down, you start Photoshop. And when you do that, you will get this thing that pops up and it says, Okay, do you want to delete the Photoshop setting files? If you are having problems, you would say yes. And then you would take the virgin copy that we've just built and plug it back in. But in our case, we're going to say no, I do not want to reset them. I just built them. Photoshop will go ahead and start. That's fine. But then you need to look now, because I'm not going to take the time to do it. I will show you how it works on mine really quickly, but we've got other stuff that I got to get to today. But if we take a look at your folder, so if we go to our website.
Wait, real quick, was it Command Option Shift?
Yes. If we go to our website really quickly, and you go to your session 1, and you go to resources, there's a file in here that says Photoshop Preference Locations. If you click on this, this will show you where every preference that Photoshop makes is actually saved for both Windows and for Macintosh. So you can see what we want to find right now are these general settings. And the general settings are inside your user folder in your user library, which I just showed you how to get to at the beginning of class. Inside the preference folder, there will be in a Photoshop, it will have the version number of settings. I've got 4 versions of Photoshop that are on my computer, so I've got 4 different versions of this. So I'm going to show you where mine is really quickly. For the Windows people, if you go all the way down here, the Windows set is right down here. This is where the Windows one is, and this is, again, the general settings. This is where you would go again. You would go to your user folder, to app data, to roaming, to Adobe Photoshop, the version, and then inside that, there will be another folder that's the Adobe Photoshop version settings. So you want to copy the entire folder. Do not move it. If you move it, you'll take it out of where it belongs. You need to make a copy of it, put that on your desktop, put it on a hard drive, put it somewhere safe. I typically will zip mine so that I know I can't do anything to it, so that then if everything goes wrong, you simply come to where this, you do a reset, and then you take that folder that you saved and you put it right back in this location, and your Photoshop will be back exactly the way it was, including that custom workspace that we just built. So where mine is again, I go to User Library, down to Preferences, not Preference Panels, but Preferences. Inside of Preferences, you can actually see right here, there is this folder, Adobe Photoshop 2026 Settings. You want to copy this to your desktop, and I'm going to show you how you do this on a Mac anyway. I'm going to hide everybody else. I'm going to make this smaller. If I grab this folder now and drag it down, you've got to be kidding me. So 2026, this guy right here, and drag it down to here. If I let go right now, it's going to move it. It's going to take it out of my preference folder, which will create havoc in Photoshop. I don't want to do that. I want to copy it. So if you hold down your Option key, you'll see that your cursor turns into a little circle, green circle with a plus in the middle. That means it's going to copy, put a copy of it down here. And if I let go, it's going to say, you've already got one down there. So I'm going to hit stop. But anyway, that's how you would actually save it, and then you're off to the races. Questions about this? Yes?
This is an aside, but is there like a particular reason why you have multiple versions of Photoshop?
Yeah, I do. So some stuff, Photoshop, as they've been adding features, they've also been getting rid of features. And so that's actually part of the reason. So yeah, I mean, that's where I ended up going back and stealing all the Pantone libraries.
Do you own that though? Did you buy that on like a disc?
Oh, the originals, yes, I've had discs
Okay,
for
so
the
if
original.
you have the subscription, does it make sense to keep older versions of Photoshop?
It again, if it so there's other things that it orphaned. You used to have in versions of Photoshop, you could work in 3D. They had a 3D workspace. You can't do that anymore. But if you had an older version of Photoshop, I think it's 2022 was the last one that had 3D, you could actually open up your file and work in 3D space. They also had lighting effects in Photoshop that in the filter set also operated in 3D space. They got rid of the 3D space, but they left the filter in there, but the filter doesn't really work in there anymore because you don't have the 3D space in there anymore. But again, you would if you used another version of Photoshop. So, but no, otherwise, then there's no really compelling reason.
And then we're supposed to delete, we're compressing the folder into a zip from the Photoshop 2026 settings and then,
And just putting it someplace safe.
okay, but then do you want us to delete the copy?
No, I don't want you to do anything.
So we're
Uh,
keeping the zip copy and.
So here's the advantage of the zip copy. Oh yeah, the one that's on your desktop that's been zipped,
Okay,
you can get rid of it.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. But the reason we're doing this is that it's not just if your Photoshop gets shitty, right? If you get a brand new computer and you don't want to go through that whole setup process again, you just swap that that folder. If you want to have that space set up the way that you want on a computer here, you can actually just drop that preference file in there and it will all function the way you're expecting it.
Can you put that in the Macintosh HD, like, thing on the screen? Like, if I wanted to, like, put the folder.
Oh yeah, you can put it anywhere that you want to keep it. Yeah.
In that 3D space, did they have lights that you
Oh,
could
yeah.
physically move around?
Yes. I know. It so sucks. Anyway.
What you use now, the Adobe Dimensions instead.
Yeah, and that's what they said. But again, if you're just on the photo plan, you don't get that unless you pay more money. So again, they're not. Anyway, it is what it is. Okay, we need to move on. We are getting almost through all of it. Okay, yeah, we're in pretty good shape here. Okay, I need everybody to come over here really quickly and stand right here. I need you to be able to see this blank screen. Again, you won't see this on the, yeah, as a matter of fact, I'm gonna pause the recording here really quick because you won't see this. Okay, time's up. How'd you do? Horrible.
It's actually.
I don't remember how to
so-
do it at all.
That's okay, don't worry. Everybody who's doing it's doing it wrong anyway.
I don't know.
I kind of love this, but how the hell did you do that? Okay, got it. Let's see what's happening. Yeah, so most of you guys do saturation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's, okay, so. I love that. It's, well, pink, it's kind of a green, sort of. Okay, I need somebody to whip out a timer and time me. I'm gonna do the same thing. So, whoever's got a timer, just when you are ready, just say go. Stop.
Oh, 17 seconds. Oh, okay.
How long?
17 seconds.
17, not too bad, right? So I can do this because I understand color. And so we are going to talk about color now. And again, like the entire lecture today, it's dry, and I'm begging you guys to invest in it. Because if you can understand color, truly understand it, this will change everything for you. This will make working in Photoshop so much simpler because you understand what you're really trying to do and the easiest way to actually go about doing it. So I'm going to show everybody what I did. If you will do this with me, because everybody's like, how the hell did you do that? If you want to go back in history, time, at the very top, you'll see the title of the car and a little thumbnail next to it. Just click on that. That's what the image looked like when you first started in Photoshop. So to do what I did, the first thing is you'll notice at the very top that says, you get the title of the car, and in parentheses it says RGB/8. That tells me that this is an RGB image in 8-bit. I like that. In the bottom of your car, if you actually click on it, you'll see that there's a readout at the very lower left-hand part of it. If you click on that, there's different things that you can actually get here, different things that you can, it'll just show up here. I want you to change that from document size, which is the default, I think, to document profile. This matters to us because if we do have a profile mismatch, and all of a sudden your beautiful file that you've been working on, your master file, you see this as something other than Adobe RGB, you know that there's a problem and you don't want to save that file and overwrite it into something that's going to really damage your file. So this is just a good catch. Yes?
When you're printing, do you still edit in Adobe RGB and then switch it to CMYK at the very end?
The drivers do all the switching to CMYK. You don't ever do that part unless you are sending it to offset press. Okay, so anyway, what I did, the first thing I'm going to do is come up to the image menu, down to mode, and I'm going to change this from RGB to LAB. We're going to look at what LAB is in just a minute. It's a completely different way of working space, a kind of working space. So go ahead and click on LAB, and now you'll notice that instead of RGB at the top, it says LAB. By the way, nobody ever refers to this as lab. Everybody calls it LAB. Nobody would call RGB RGB. You sound like an idiot.
That's not capital. Like, if the A was capital and the B was capital, it's like...
I'm just saying, don't call it lab. Call it LAB. That's all I'm saying. But now look at your channels palette over here. You'll see that you no longer have RGB channels here. You've now got a lightness channel and an A channel and a B channel. If you click on the lightness channel, it'll show you. It's the luminosity of the car. All of the color information is in the A channel and in the B channel. The A channel represents the magenta green axis. The B channel represents the blue-yellow axis. Again, we're going to look at color spaces in a minute. So if this doesn't mean anything to you right now, don't worry about it. But the advantage of this is that in LAB, I've divorced luminosity from color. That's not possible in RGB. In RGB, luminosity and color are completely interconnected. If I make my red, if I change the value of my red in Photoshop, then also it ends up making the car either lighter or darker. It's the same. That does not happen in LAB. So I'm going to click on the top again of the very top thing, the LAB composite channel part. So then I'm going to come over here, and remember I said that there was absolutely no reason to have the adjustment panel in the middle. Well, the reason is that because if you look at the icons that run along the very bottom of your level of your layers palette, all those controls are there. So I want to talk really quickly about what these are. At the very bottom, you can see that I'm going to start on the left-hand side, so the bottom of my layers palette. There's a thing that looks like a garbage can. That's how you throw layers away. You simply drag them into that garbage can, and it will get rid of them. The thing that's right next to it, the square that's actually got a plus in the middle, if you click on that, it adds an empty blank layer up above. If you want to get rid of this layer that you just added, you can just hit the delete key, or I'm going to add it back again. You can simply drag it down to the garbage can. It does the same thing. The next icon over that looks like a folder is the way you can actually add groups to your layer stack. So a lot of the work that we do, we will put into groups, because once you get about 15, 20 layers, it starts to get to be really confusing what's what. So you can put, for instance, you can put all of your color correction in one layer. You can put all of your retouching, not in one layer, in one group. You can put all your retouching in one group. You can put all your whatever you're doing. You can build groups out of this that just bring some order to your layer stack. That's what that's all about. The icon that's the half black circle, half white circle, if you click on that, you will get a flyout menu. This is where all of the possible adjustment things that existed in that adjustment panel are. So curves and levels and hue and saturation, all of that is in here. So we don't need that panel that's sitting in the middle. There's no reason to keep that. It's just taking up space because they're all sitting right here. The next one over, the square, white square with the black circle in the middle, is how you add a layer mask. Then the next one over, the FX one, is how you get into layer styles. And then finally, the last one, looks like a little chain link, is how you can link layers together. So you can, if you've got 3 or 4 layers that you want to actually do something with them collectively, you can link them all up together and then move them, transform them, all of that kind of stuff. So that's what's going on back there. So I do have my car in LEB right now. I am going to add a curve to this. So click on the icon that's half black and half white, come up, and we are going to add a curve. And in the properties panel now, you don't have RGB up at the top anymore. In the drop-down menu at the top, you've now got lightness, and if you click on it, it comes down to A and to B. So I am going to not change any of the lightness, though I want the luminosity to remain unchanged. I am going to come to the A channel though, and the A channel represents the green magenta axis. So that's what I want. I want to just invert it. So I'm going to grab the black point at the very bottom of my of the graph, of the histogram, click and drag it all the way up to the top, and then I'm going to grab the white point over on the right-hand side and drag it all the way down. I've simply inverted the curve. And in doing so, everything that was in the reds and magentas got shifted to greens, and everything that was in the greens actually got shifted to reds. You can see the grass in the car, the grass back in here is actually shifted as well. So the last, and you can see the building, the bricks in the building that were red bricks have all turned to green. So the luminosity is unchanged. I did change that part of the car, but the reason that the whites and the chromes and the silvers, nothing changed in them, is there's no color in them. And their luminosity is unchanged because I divorced the luminosity. So that's the trick. Okie dokie.
In a situation where you want to change, like if someone has red undertones in their skin and they have a red outfit on and you want to change the outfit to blue, would you mask the outfit to keep the skin from changing
Sure.
colors? And then do the same
Yeah,
thing?
I would have thrown a mask on this so that the building didn't go green, but yeah. Okay, so back to this. So you guys noticed that this screen changed in lightness, right? Your screen determines your black point. Can you get any blacker than this screen in your image? You can't. This thing's turned off. There's no way to get this blacker. But you can get it lighter if you have light in your room. We need to talk about your retouching environment. What really controls this? So in your retouching environment, the environment that you are in controls your black point. And there's no way to get around this. I know there's people who start, it drives me crazy. People will start retouching in a room that's really light, and then they'll keep retouching right through the afternoon and into the night, and at nighttime, there's no available light coming in, so things are really dark. Your black point has shifted completely during the day. It started out gray because you had too many lights on in the room, so you throw a curve on there trying to get it to be more solid black, but then you get it at nighttime and all of a sudden it's way too black. It's because the light in your room changed. If you are serious about your retouching, you cannot be in a room that's got variable light. That's why all of the retouching space that we have over in the digital print lab, that's why all the windows are closed. That's why the lights don't come on. That's all of that reason is to shut that down. You need to be in a consistent environment to be serious about your retouching. How dark do you want your room to be? You want to be able to navigate your room. You want to be able to recognize furniture. You don't want to trip and fall or that kind of stuff, but not much above that level. That's where you want it to be, and you want it to always be there. Now, this applies to when you're doing true tone and color work. It doesn't mean that when you are doing compositing work or something that you can't be in a bright room. You can. It doesn't matter that you're in a bright room when you're doing email. You can do all of those things. But when it comes time to actually set the tone and color, you have got to be in a shut down environment that is predictable. It gets worse. Perfect example. Beautiful pink little jacket part on there, right? Why would you not want to wear that when you're retouching? Because you are casting pink into your screen. So you see it as a pink cast. So you put a color correction curve on there to remove the pink cast, but the pink cast is not in your image. It's not in your monitor. You're wearing it. So you retouch in black. You don't retouch in a color of anything. The room, the environment, the color of the walls, what light you do have in the wall. Oh, I really like this yellow paint. You know that fucking ugly yellow paint that they've got room 917? Just that really, it's that really nasty mustardy color, whatever. You got a room like that, your whole room is casting on your screen. And so you're trying to do color work in there. You look at the cast, you say, well, I've got to get rid of all this yellow. It's not in your image. It's not in your monitor. It's in the walls around it, and it's being reflected off of your screen. So most people, if you're really serious about your retouching, you're in a dark room. The walls are all painted what they call a Munsell 8. It's a very specific middle gray. This goes back to what you were talking about earlier. I mean, what you really work in. Professional retouching studios, people wear clothes that are Munsell 8. So at any rate. Okay, so we're going to start a quick version of color theory. We won't get through the whole thing. The whole slide presentation, though, guys, the whole thing is only 15 slides long, so don't get too nervous about this part. But I do want to get through this part as quickly as we can, and we're in pretty good shape. Well, we've got 10 minutes. So at any rate, we'll start wherever we wherever we end up. We'll pick up the rest of it again next week. Okay, so we're going to start with additive primaries. So red, green, and blue are the primaries in an additive system. Cyan, magenta, and yellow are the secondaries. So what you need to do when you're looking at this is imagine there are 3 projectors here. This is all light. This is not print. This is light. So imagine there's 3 projectors that are shooting down on the screen. One of them has got a green filter on it, one of them's got a blue filter, and one of them's got a red filter. Where the green and the blue overlap right here, you get cyan. Where the green and the red overlap, you get yellow. And where the red and the blue overlap, you get magenta. Where all 3 of them overlap, if these values, the amounts of these are all equal, at its maximum intensity, you get white. Regardless where they all 3 are together, you get a gray. If they are the exact same amounts, you get a neutral gray. This is really important because this is the principle behind white balancing. This is what we do when we white balance. So again, it's not some magic tool. It's based on this. So it is an emissive technology. If you think about it, if you look at this screen, you remember this screen, it starts out black. And then you start to add power to it. And as the screen starts to brighten up, it is an additive system. It is adding light to ultimately reveal whatever images you see on it. You start with black, and then you add light to it. And then depending on the combination, the amount of green, the amount of blue, and the amount of red that you add, you can get any single color imaginable. All the colors are made out of those 3, combinations of those 3. So equal amounts of RGB equal gray. This is critical to us. This is how you white balance images, is based on exactly on this. When you use that little white balance tool and you click on something, whatever you click on, it makes the 3 RGB values exactly the same, and that's how you get it. White is equal to RGB, equal amounts of RGB at maximum intensity. How black is black? Well, we've already said that. It's as black as this screen turned off, can't get any blacker. Your environment can impact it, but the screen itself can't get any darker than that because there is no light. Questions? Are we good on that? All right, and the flip side to this is subtractive primaries. So why is this envelope yellow or orange, whatever color color we're going to call it? Why? Why do you see this as orange? Why is that pink? Why is what the little guy is like lavender, lilac-y, lavender-y color? This guy, your pencil guy. Why is color that? Say what? Well, no. So the reason that this is yellow is that in this room right now, basically we have white light. White light is made up of all the colors. RGB is complete set. So when that white light hits this thing, the color, the dye in here does two things. The first thing it does is that it absorbs every color in here that you're not seeing. The one thing it doesn't absorb is this yellow, and the yellow is reflected back to you, and so you see it as being yellow. So the way dyes work are by subtracting. So what ends up happening in the subtractive system like this, these are now pigments. These are not lights. This is an ink. This is a yellow ink, this is a magenta ink, and this is a cyan ink. And when you put them down on paper, they actually subtract from that white light that's hitting them. So cyan, magenta, and yellow are the primaries. You can see red, green, and blue are the secondaries. So when you combine yellow and magenta ink, you get red. When you combine cyan and yellow, you get green. When you combine magenta and cyan, you get blue. In theory, if you combine all of these together in equal parts at their maximum intensity, you should have black, but you don't. And the reason you don't is because they cannot, there's nothing exists in the real world pigment-wise that can give you a pure cyan, a pure magenta, and a pure yellow. They simply don't exist. Now, you can do RGB in computers because you can actually calibrate computers and you can trick things in computers to give you what we would consider to be pure RGB. But there is nothing in the world that will give you this. I mean, people have tried forever. Cyan's actually the big culprit. It's worse than the other two, but the other two are just as bad. Not just as bad, but bad. So they work by absorbing light on paper. So you start with white. So I'm going to start with this. This is I start with this. Blank piece of paper. I put ink on it. If I do the ink part correctly and I take it to its max, I can turn this thing black. But it's all because I'm putting ink on it to subtract all of the color that is bouncing off of it right now. That's why they call this a subtractive process, whereas your computer monitor is additive. You're starting with black, you add to get to color. Here you start with white, you subtract to get to color. That's part of the reason that all of this is so tricky when you go from a screen to a print, is they're two completely different color systems. So you can subtract any amounts to achieve any sort of value for RGB. Pure CMY pigments do not exist. Equal amounts of CMY do not equal gray. Black is also not equal to CMYK at its maximum intensity. This is why you need K. So what happens is that in a printing world, cyan, magenta, and yellow do really good in what we would call the highlights and the quarter tones, very light stuff. But once you start getting into the midtones and then deeper into the three-quarter tones and the shadows, you need to replace these inks with black, because the impurities of this gives you a really dark, muddy brown. You will never get something that looks like a black. It just looks like really shitty brown. So what they do is when you start getting into those darker areas, they start pulling out in those areas amounts of these primary inks, the CMY, and they start replacing it with literally a black ink. And that's why in all the inkjet printers that you guys use, they have CMYK cartridges, but they also all have black in them as well. Make sense? Okay. Why does this keep going off? How white is white?
255.
Well, that's in an RGB world. How white is white, though? Can this piece of paper be any whiter? No.
What if we turn the lights on?
Well, I mean, there's light, but the piece of paper, the inherent whiteness of this cannot be any whiter. So again, it's just the opposite of our additive system. We're starting with an end point. Your white paper is as white as it gets. When you print something out, you can't make the whiter any whiter. You can only make it darker. In your screen, starting out, it's black. You can only make it lighter. You cannot make it any darker. This whole process is important. Yes?
This might be a dumb question, but when printing, could you theoretically get black paper and do the RGB process printing?
So the reason that they use CMYK, theoretically you could flip those systems, but the problem is that when you look at the additive primaries, red, green, and blue, they already, tonally speaking, are middle gray.
Wait, can you repeat that?
When you look at the tonality of an RGB, the tones of them, if you convert them to grayscale, they are for the most part in the midtones already. Blue is actually a little bit darker. So it's very hard to get something of really light content of your image. When you're working in CMYK, you've got yellow, which is light, and you've got cyan, which is also light. So you don't run into that much. It's less difficult. But to try to do a print with red, green, and blue inks is, again, to do something that seems very light is almost impossible. So anyway. Okay, last thing that we're going to do. I need everybody to go back into your Photoshop. I'm going to go there with you really quickly, and this is the note that we will end on. So I need you to click on the foreground color, so the two color swatches that are in the lower left-hand corner. If you just click on one, it doesn't matter what color it is. We're going to actually work with the colors in here. The color picker will actually open up, and I want to get everybody on the same page that I'm on, so I wanted you to have black. So again, if you select the value next to the R radio button, so don't click on the radio button, just click on the space for it, type in a 0, hit the tab key, 0 green, tab key, 0 blue. You get 0, 0, 0, and you can see the color that's in here is black. If you now click on the radio button right next to R, you will see that the column changes to whatever the radio button is on. So by clicking on R, you can see I've got a scale here on the side, the column, and it becomes my red scale. Now, there are two little arrows that are down at the very bottom. If you can take those arrows and you can actually move them, and when you move them, you will see that the value of R changes. So we're starting out with a 0 red. That's actually a black red, but it's different than a blue red or a green red mathematically. They all look black, but nonetheless. But if you drag this thing all the way up to the top, you will see it tops out at 255. What this is telling us is that we have, in a typical 8-bit image, 256 tones of red. Does that make sense, everyone? The reason it's 256 and not 255 is that 0 is actually a value. So if you add the 0 to the 255 we're at right now, you get 256. If, on the other hand, you click on the green, I'm gonna drag the red column all the way back down again. If I click on the green radio button, I get the same thing. I have 256 values of green. And if I click on the blue, I've got the same, 256 values of blue. If you crank the blue all the way up and you then click on the green and you crank it all the way up, you have cyan. Again, these are now the two primaries mixed together. The blue and the green give me the secondary, which is cyan. If you crank that back down, we can do this with all of them. I'm going to crank down my blue again as well. And instead, I'm going to crank my red all the way up, and I'm going to crank the green all the way up, and we end up with yellow, which is the secondary color combination of these two as well. Does that make sense? Okay, last thing to do here is I'm going to drag this back down again. I want you to do a quick change in values, and this is the last thing we'll do, guys. We've gone a minute late, but we're almost done here. Type in the red value here really quickly and type in 128. Hit the tab key and go 128 again. Tab key 128. This is now giving you 128 green, 128 blue, 128 red. This is middle gray. It's right in the middle of our range, but because we have equal amounts of RGB, we have a neutral gray. If you then click on the radio button next to the B stands for brightness. This will show you what we can change just the tonality, lighter gray, darker gray. But as you start to drag this thing all the way up to white or all the way down, look at your RGB numbers. They are all exactly the same. No matter where you are, they're equal amounts of RGB equal gray. Are we good on this part? Great. I will see you guys next week.